Hi folks, Unitic here, also known as Logan. It is 7:15 Eastern Time on Sunday, August the 9th, and I am 10 days into the bicycling leg of this Trek for Truth. 1,100 plus miles of hiking back to Louisville, Kentucky from Delaware on the Atlantic Ocean. And then a little bit of time off to rest and recuperate, build up a bicycle. And Drew and I decided to continue to take a leap of faith and keep at this, trying to put out information that we feel is empowering. It's also disturbing, and if you've watched any of our videos and followed along, excuse me, the bugs are coming out here, then you kind of know some of the topics we're talking about. And I haven't recorded a video in quite a while since my last day on the trail up in Clifty Falls State Park. Now I'm in a little place called Alley Springs Mill Campground. It's a National Park Service campground right by the Jacks Fork of the Current River in central Missouri. Covered about 530 miles so far, including the last 2 days in the Ozark Mountains. Today was far and away the hardest day, I think maybe in general, I've had on this trek. Just up and down really steep mountains. It got into the mid-90s today and really humid. I left 7 a.m. to try and beat the heat and got most of my mileage in by noon. But that last 5 or 6 miles I did after lunch, as Phil and Paul would say, our Tour de France commentators, I was knackered, but feeling better now. Got a shower here at the campground, and decided to go ahead and try to catch you guys up and talk about some topics that have been weighing on my mind for a long time, but particularly over the last 6 weeks or so. I kept thinking about recording a video, but just didn't feel called to express at that moment. So I've learned enough to kind of listen to spirit, so to speak, and express myself when it feels right, and it feels right now. So today, Drew and I launched an Indiegogo campaign to try and raise some funds to replenish our coffers. After 3+ months of journeying, we've pretty well expended the money we set aside to try and start this project. And we're hoping people across the country, may see some value in just 2 more Americans stepping up and talking about things that literally hundreds of thousands, more likely millions of people are talking about. The encroachment and erosion of individual freedom in the United States, perpetual lying, corruption, mismanagement at all levels of government, but particularly at the federal level. It's kind of moved into the theater of the absurd, between mandatory vaccination laws coming out, medical tyranny. The financial system is an absolute fraud, and I've recorded many videos about that. It feels like it's getting to the point where these things are becoming so blatant that people are either going to have to work extremely hard at ignoring these developments, what some people would call tyrannical developments, and continuing to placate themselves with distractions and denial, or they're going to wake up and realize something's deeply off in our country and the world, and we have the ability to do something about it. And that's what Drew and I are trying to do. We were tired of sitting by and feeling like we weren't making even an attempt to add our voices to the mix in some kind of meaningful way. So thanks to Drew's writing ability and his organizational ability and just his strength of spirit, I was blessed to have him partner with me. And I've got a hard head, I've got a good mind and an analytical mind, and also a very vibrant spirit that I identify with more than my mind these days. But they work together. So we're trying, and we hope to inspire and encourage other people to do what they can to step up for human freedom. So the Indiegogo campaign, in part, is to help us finish this excursion all the way to California. I should be out for about another 8 weeks, give or take, and hopefully reach San Francisco, California, or San Diego. I haven't decided yet, by early October. You know, obviously I'm still advocating for the truth about Lyme disease. It's one of the biggest frauds and lies out there right now, and I'm going to give an example of that here in a bit when I talk about government corruption and the revolving door of corporate ownership of our supposed elected officials. So if you can help, we appreciate it. If you feel called to support the Indiegogo campaign, that's great. You can also make a financial contribution at our website, www.trekfortruth.org. Just as important that you share this information, you know, social media, whatever way, shape, or form, word of mouth. We're on Facebook under Trek for Truth. We're on YouTube under Trek for Truth, and obviously we're under our website, www.trekfortruth.org. So, my academic passion over my entire life has been history. And over the last 20 years, since I was in graduate school at the University of Louisville studying modern European history, about the time of the run-up to the first Gulf War, it became increasingly obvious to me how ridiculously manipulated our mainstream American history is, as well as worldwide history, but I'm going to focus on America. Had some amazing professors in graduate school at the University of Louisville. One in particular was Dr. John Kumbler, who taught a class called Social History that really began to light the fuse for me. That and getting turned on to Howard Zinn and the People's History of the United States in that same period. One of the other truth seekers and phenomenal researchers that Drew and I tout a lot is a guy named Alan Weisbecker. And you can find his website at banditobooks.com. He's a very, very accomplished author, screenwriter, and now a documentary filmmaker, and he's out traveling the country in a mobile home right now, doing the same thing in principle that we're trying to do. He's making films, he's writing blogs, he's doing incredible research. And Alan made a statement once that I totally agree with, that virtually every major historical event since World War II, the official versions of those events are complete and utter lies. And I'm going to give you 2 examples for those of you that have decided to maybe re-embrace critical thinking as a part of your way of establishing your own version of reality. And that's the Kennedy assassination, which happened at the beginning of my life, and now, you know, the most defining historical event of most of our lives, 9/11. If you took a really, really good, hard, objective, academic look at the official accounts via the Warren Report and via the 9/11 Commission report, they're the most ludicrous conspiracy theory, either a lone gunman or 19 box-cutting, wielding, non-flying Arab terrorists, Muslim terrorists. The details are absolutely ridiculous. And it just stuns so many of us that there are still people that are so conditioned, it's understandable, to believe anything that comes out from their government as official, that it must be the truth. You know, it's understandable because we're conditioned from our earliest age to blindly respect and follow authority figures. Be it a man in a white coat, a woman in a white coat, a professor, a clergy member, a politician. We're programmed literally from our earliest conscious memories to just blindly obey. Well, it's not working anymore. That programming is falling apart at the seams, and more people like myself, like Drew, and like Alan, and so many others have woken up to the fraud, the lies, the collusion, the self-interested people, some might call them sociopaths or psychopaths, that have a vested interest in continuing to perpetrate these ridiculous lies. Those are the really crazy conspiracy theories. Anybody that reads the Warren Commission report and the 9/11 Commission report and doesn't see the theater of the absurd, you know, honestly, probably needs a brick upside the head to knock some sense loose. You know, use your own critical thinking here, and that's all Drew and I are trying to encourage. I mentioned one other example I want to give, and that's having to do with the corruption, total corruption, at the top levels of federal agencies that are literally bought and paid for by corporate America. They are not protecting the public interest. Particularly the FDA and the CDC are two I want to call out. The CDC is a revolving door of execs that move back and forth between big pharma corporations and high positions in the quote-unquote public sector. So let me give you one example of that. Julie Gerberding was the head of the CDC once removed. Thomas Friedkin is the exec now heading the CDC. Julie, when she left the CDC, 1 year and 1 day, the exact federal minimum that's required, she takes a job as the head, the president of the Merck Pharmaceutical Vaccine Division. The CDC is the largest single purchaser of vaccines in the United States. And it just so happens that about 80% of the vaccines that are recommended by the CDC and now being mandated by different states around the country for children, you know, a ridiculous number of them, and it escalates every year because they're so profitable. And the corporations that produce these vaccines are now legally shielded from any liability. They can't be sued. So what incentive do they have to make a safe product when they're totally protected? You know, look up vaccine court on Google and you may be surprised to find out your rights being stripped away in that regard too. So Julie leaves the CDC, the defender of the public health, goes to the Merck Vaccine Division to promote and sell the very products that the CDC is supposed to be overseeing the safety of, along with the FDA. You know, Michael Taylor, vice president of the FDA, is a former Monsanto executive, put in place by Obama. And if you look at Obama's nominations to all of his top cabinet posts and all of the regulatory agencies, you'll see absolutely no difference to the same cronyism that George W. Bush, Little Bush, and his father did as well. You know, we're talking two sides of the same coin, and this false dichotomy between Republicans and Democrats and conservatives and liberals is just more theater of the absurd, and hopefully more and more people are waking up to this. And no, Donald Trump nor any other presidential candidate right now is your savior. If you want to know if a candidate is totally acceptable to the powers that be, just look at those that get the nomination of their party, because they're not going to be put on the ballot for you and I to choose from unless they're completely vetted and acceptable to these same vested interests. I think it's Mark Twain that said, if the power to vote actually changed anything, it would have been taken away from us long ago. So I'm not trying to be cynical here, I'm just trying to be direct, and I'm trying to be absolutely clear about where I'm coming from. Lyme disease and all of the lies that surround it is a poster child of this fraud and corruption. And I'm done with dancing around the edges around that topic or any other, and that's a big part of what the Trek for Truth is about. We as individuals have the power to do something about this, and don't you let any programming, any mass media crap convince you otherwise. That's why they work so hard to convince us that one person can't make a difference. Because once we wake up to our collective and individual power, it's game over, and we can recreate a new version of this grand experiment, quote unquote, the United States of America and other countries. There's so much more to our history if you really dig into it and the manipulation behind it. It's shocking and dizzying and disconcerting to find out that most of what you've grown up believing about your history and your frame of reference for your country is really based on a house of cards and lies and half-truths. But when you wake up to that and you're willing to go ahead and face your fears and step in and start redefining who you are and who we can be, that's when real freedom can begin to emerge. So we are going to make a documentary. We're shamelessly borrowing from Richard Grove and Tragedy and Hope, and we're just asking folks a very tough but simple question is define freedom. How many of us have ever sat down and really defined what freedom means to us? Freedom inside, at your heart, your happiness, your spirit. You know, it starts there, but the external representations of it too. And are we going to continue to put up with people who want to continue to confine and shrink down our sense of the possible and our earthly experience while we're here? There's enough in this world to go around to keep everybody healthy, happy, and able to express who they really are creatively when we wake up to the real power of human beings. So that's my soapbox for today. Thank you for hanging in there. I hope you keep following along on the trek. Please subscribe at our website, www.trekfortruth.org, and if you can help us in any way, shape, or form, we appreciate it. If you're not in a position to, just keep holding that sacred space for us that we're going to be successful in whatever it is we're meant to contribute to this global effort. Viet Animo, strength and courage, heart and soul, Unitic out for today.